Welcome to Storify. Today we're going to cover 9 modules where I will explain to you how you can actually make real business results using the power of storytelling. So let's get to it. Number 1, the first thing you need to know is that storytelling today, in today's world, is the fastest way that you can actually deliver real world results in the areas of sales, marketing, recruiting, branding, and a whole variety of other areas where you need to persuade people, right? So if you're a business owner, if you're a startup, if you're a salesperson, your income today is not determined by all these external factors. It's determined by just one thing, and that is your story. What do I mean by that? I mean that your story today, the story that you tell yourself, the stories you tell others, the stories others tell about you, okay, all these stories actually determine whether you are successful or not. We're not going to cover into the main areas of internal storytelling, but I will certainly be able to share with you how you can actually tell stories to others to actually influence them, persuade them, and make them to want what you want as opposed to do what you want. So we're going to cover all these things, but I'm just going to run through, but there are 3 secrets that I'm going to share with you today. The first secret is how you can double your sales in half the time, and even if you don't like selling at all, right? How to actually double sales, how you can sell more even though you hate selling. That's the first one. The second one is how can you make a brand? How can you create a brand about yourself or your business that makes the competition irrelevant, that makes customers madly fall in love with you, or makes your supporters and followers really appreciate you for what you are, and not really look at anyone else for that particular service that you do. So that's the second one. And the third one is, if you are a business, if you're in recruitment, if you're an owner of a startup and you're looking to hire high value, high talent candidates, right? How can you magically attract them to you, to your business? And all of this I'm going to share with you. And hint, it's the power of storytelling, okay? So just one caveat before we go on. Don't actually believe a word that I say from here onwards. Why is that? Well, basically, I only speak from my experience. And I'm not asking you to believe anything. I'm asking you to think, to really mentally challenge whatever I'm saying and accept it as your own, right? That's the first one. The second one is, this is not school. I'm not here to teach you anything, okay? I am here to make you think, to make you wonder, to make you ponder the possibilities and ask the right questions, right? All the answers in the world are available already, most of them on Google, right? But so the answers are all there, but to me it's actually asking the right questions. And today we're going to go through, in this course, in this lesson, in this little video, we're going to go through those questions, to make you ask the right ones. Okay, so this is the content right here. There are 9 modules, and I'll just cover them very briefly. Number 1 is the introduction, where you learn about the storytelling and you learn about my story, so to speak, right? Second one is we go into the fundamentals of storytelling. The third one is we introduce this new concept of storytelling called story selling, right? And step number 4, module number 4, is actually step number 1 of what I call the CALM methodology, CALM, CALM. And CALM stands for C for create, A for authenticate, L for leverage, and M for monetize. This 4-step process is guaranteed to improve your sales, increase your engagement with buyers, and make you much more successful in whatever you do, especially when it comes to influence and persuasion. After that's done, we will look at advanced tactics. So advanced tactics are more related to your particular industry, your particular space, or particular use cases where you might be needing help there. And then finally, we have the last module, module 9, which is about the resources that you can go. So where do you go from here? You know, all the different resources if you want to, you know, take a different angle from there. Okay, so let's jump right to it. Module 1, introduction. Okay, so the science behind storytelling is what I'm focused on. There are many books out there which talk about the art of storytelling. They teach you to become a better storyteller. That's not what this is about. This is about how you can use the science that drives people to buy, that drives people to buy, that drives people to make decisions, right? And understand the motivations, and a lot of it is to do with neuroscience, behavioral psychology, and a whole different areas of growth marketing, which is getting very hot today. So I'm going to teach you how to effortlessly neutralize objections as and when they arise, using not just stories, as I mentioned, but the science behind the power of storytelling. Right, so who is this for? If you're an entrepreneur, salesperson, if you are a change agent, if you're working in a large company and you need to make some digital transformation program go, this is for you. If you're a leader in a particular industry organization and you need to be able to learn how to influence people in a better way, the story is for you. If you're a marketing professional, if you're in sales, if you're in customer service, right? You're trying to engage with customers better. In all these areas, you will find that story selling, storytelling, stories, all these really help you in a big way, right? So before we go on, let me tell you about me. You can learn about me on indhran.com, but what I'm about to share with you in this video, you will not see on my website, right? So let's jump in. I started my life in a little remote village outside of Kuala Lumpur. It's about 9 hours away. It's almost near the Thailand border. So I was born in this little village, and it was really a fishing village. There was not a lot to see there besides the beach, and wonderful place, but very boring and I grew up in little small towns, yeah, across the east coast of Malaysia. And so early on I developed an interest to learn stuff, but I never really enjoyed reading, right? I preferred watching movies or watching TV or whatever. So I wasn't really a reader, but I did enjoy stories. I did enjoy listening to stories, and who wouldn't, right? You're coming from a small town, and there's not a lot of the bright lights in the big city. So this is basically what happened with me. And as I grew up, I became a teenager, my family moved to the city of Kuala Lumpur, and in that city, that was my first shock, because it was noisy, it was loud, there was a lot of activity going on, and it was a bit of a culture shock for me. But it's also here where I learned, got my first taste of sales. So I actually started working in a door-to-door selling for Time magazine. So going from door-to-door selling Time magazine subscriptions, and it was there that I found my love for selling, for actually engaging with people, and so I'm not really an indoors person, but I'm more like an outdoors person, like going out to the field and actually meeting people. That really gives me energy and drives me further. So this is what happens. Now, after the big city, my parents sent me to university, and it was in Scotland. So again, this was another shock for me, and in Scotland was a bit of a turning point, because I went to study accounting and finance at Strathclyde University in Glasgow. And one of the things that I did was on a whim, almost like just for fun. I saw this little elective subject called consumer behavior, and I thought, wow, that's interesting. It was so different from all the other subjects that I was taking in terms of finance, like corporate finance and all this other accounting and all the other dry subjects. So I said, wow, behavior. Okay, let's look at what consumer behavior is about. So I went for this program. I went for this class, and there was a French professor. I remember clearly. She had a really thick French accent. It was very hard to understand her, but I fell in love with the topic. I fell in love with the whole psychology of the customer and how customers buy and stuff like that. And one thing that really changed me in terms of a paradigm shift was actually the Coke Pepsi test. I don't know whether you know this, but when I was when I was growing up, I was a Pepsi drinker, and the world at that time was basically divided into two: Coke drinkers and Pepsi drinkers, and that was it, right? So if you're not a Coke drinker, you're a Pepsi drinker, and vice versa, right? So in this cola generation, which I grew up in, I definitely identified myself as a Coke drinker. I'm so much a Coke drinker that I would, if I went to the restaurant or the place and they didn't have Coke, I wouldn't order Pepsi. I'll just go like, you know what, I'll choose something else. I would not choose Pepsi, right? So when I did this taste test, the blind taste test, I was pretty sure that I knew what I wanted. I knew that I would choose choose Coke. But it turns out that I actually chose Pepsi, right? And not only did I choose Pepsi, I chose the diet version of Pepsi, right? So when I tasted it, and I tasted it again, and I said, this is my favorite taste. Pepsi, Diet Pepsi is absolutely the favorite for me, for sure, right? And I'm not going to take Coke again, I think, because I found a better tasting cola right here. So so I made up my mind that I was a Pepsi person now, right? But when I went to the supermarket to do my groceries that weekend, guess what brand I chose? Back to Coke, right? So even though my mind knew that I had definitely preferred Pepsi, Diet Pepsi, my heart or the rest of me said, no, you are a Coke drinker. You identify yourself as a Coke drinker. You do not identify yourself as a Pepsi drinker. So that was my first introduction of how, for example, how these big brands owned me, right? It's like this big brand owns me, and I'm voluntarily being, wanting to be associated with Coke. I didn't understand why at that time, but this is part of it, right? So anyway, my career went pretty much upward in a nice way. I joined AstraZeneca upon my return from Scotland, and very quickly I got some very good sales results, 40% above target, and then I moved on to Electrolux, where again in a sales marketing role, I was the youngest general manager there. I was promoted to become youngest general manager within the Electrolux group. So that was great, and eventually I was headhunted to be part of HSBC, and in HSBC was a very interesting part of my career, because I actually got involved in a branding program. But this is unlike any other branding program. When you think branding programs, you think, oh, okay, you've got this logo that you need to do, or you've got this whatever else. But this was very interesting because it was not so much the brand and the brand promise or the messaging of the brand or the advertising of the brand. It was to do with the delivery of the brand, right? Which is infinitely harder, right? It's easy to talk, but to walk the walk, that is the hard part. So I was part of a five-person team. We were selected from all over the world. I was the only one from Malaysia to be selected for this program. And what we did was we basically looked at 5 different areas where we could really make a difference to the bank, to the level of service, right? And make it similar to, or at least fulfill the brand promise. So I looked at that. The area that I looked after was called customer service. And so I ran programs, and this is across 33,000 employees, serving 80 million customers worldwide, right? It was a very, very large program, multiple time zones and stuff like that. So the important thing was we needed to be able to engage the frontliners, right? So one day my boss asked me to go and create a video game. Now, a video game that employees can play, and the more they play it, the more they should imbibe the values that we were trying to instill in them, which is the values of HSBC, which is, you know, speed, customer experience, innovation, stuff like that. So, like, I don't know nuts about videos, right? I'm not really a gamer. I never really understood gaming, but I did go and meet up with some game developers and learned the basis of game design, and in that search I learned a few things about Nintendo. I learned a few things about how Nintendo, with their Super Mario Brothers, uses a storytelling model to actually within their game design, right? It's a 4-part storytelling model called Kisho Tenketsu. And Kisho Tenketsu, it's such a simple model. And when I saw it, I thought, my God, you know, this is such a versatile model that you could actually apply it into gaming, and you could apply it into a variety of things. I wonder if we could apply it into business, right? But I never really thought about that much because I was really busy doing the rollout and this whole program for HSBC. Anyway, so the guy behind Super Mario Brothers is this guy called Koichi Hayashida, and he's definitely one of my influences in my journey now for storytelling. So long story short, by the end of the program, coincidentally maybe, HSBC was regarded as the #1 most valuable global banking brand, right? And that was amazing for me, and I really felt that, wow, you know, all the success of HSBC was because of me, and you know, walking 2 feet tall, 2 feet taller than above the ground, right? And so it was great, right? Great, but not really, because within 100 days from the end of that program, I was broke, jobless, and in a strange new country, just within 100 days. So how did that happen? So basically, after I left HSBC, I'm a Malaysian citizen, so I got a job offer in Australia, and the headhunter basically said, look, you've got the job, but you need a work permit. So I was already planning to migrate to Australia at that time. So I looked at I got involved. I got the migration agent, and basically got them to do the work permit and whatever else, right? Because I qualified for the point system that they had. It's called the 452 visa. Yes. So the problem was that this particular visa takes, I think, about 30 days to process, right? They delayed it by a month. So instead of 30 days, it was 60 days, right? And within that 60 days, the bank that was hiring started to fire employees. This was 2008, global financial crisis. So my job was, it just basically disappeared. So here I am, 60 days later, I've got the work permit, but I don't have the job. and it was just a complete opposite of before, where the guy said, you know, you've got the job, but no work permit. That's why we can't give it to you. But now it's the other way around. So I said, okay, no problem. I'm good. I'm great. I will be able to get another job just like that, right? And so I started applying. So by this time, I'm already in Australia, right? And I started applying to multiple jobs, right? And getting rejection after rejection. I think at the end of it, I got like 154 rejections, right? So by this time I was like really down, right? You're thinking like, especially from the high that I had earlier, I was very, very depressed. I even contemplated suicide, suicide depression at one point, because you just feel like, oh my God, you're useless, you're nothing, right? And but anyway, I did also try to do some little things on the side while I was looking for jobs, and that was a bit of content writing for websites, right? So I started to do some little content writing to help companies to get their websites looking better, right? And one day, a client of my client, right, a friend of my client, was also someone known to me. He wanted to do some videos, so he said, Indhran, can you do these videos? And I said, sure, no problem, right? But actually, I didn't have much at all. I just had a little tourist little handycam. And so I turned up on Friday afternoon to this guy's place, and he was an insurance agent. He wasn't an insurance agent, he was a financial planner, right? That actually also was an insurance agent and provided insurance services, right? And so he basically wanted to create stories about how insurance had actually helped the his clients, right? So one by one, he would invite, every Friday he would invite different people. And I remember this one person who came in to give a testimonial, and I still remember because it was so amazing. This guy, basically his daughter was really, really good at ice skating, so good that she became like an Olympic, part of the Australian Olympic team. And she was like a celebrity, almost like a sports celebrity, right? And but she died in a very tragic ferry accident in Sydney. And because of that, this guy became completely depressed. He became completely unable to work. And because he had taken disability insurance before, right, the insurance covered every single thing, and they'd been covering it for years now. Like, it was, by the time when I did the interview, it was like 4 years, right? And they were still paying him every month, and his life was just going on. Of course, he talked about the incident. He began to cry during the thing. My eyes teared. It was very, very emotional. Anyway, I put that video up on his website, and within 7 days, it was on the first page of Google. Now, this particular financial services provider is, let me explain to you, it's actually a small player, right? I think he was like on, I don't know, page 13 of Google, right? And Zoom, because of that video, he went straight to page 1 within 7 days, right? And that's when I realized, wow, from page 13 to page 1, right? Within 7 days, this is the power of video, but also this is the power of stories, right? The power of storytelling. And so slowly I began to understand much more about storytelling, and I started to actually say, let me think of different ways to make this more relevant, because the problem that I saw with stories, I mean, stories are great, right? We all talk about stories, about what happened at the pub, last night or last weekend. We talk about stories, about miraculous stories, all kinds of stories, right? But how does that work in business, right? And how, for example, if you talk about story that is the stories you see in Hollywood, right? These blockbuster movies, amazing, amazing stories, but unable. They are unable to actually get these stories, right? That they are unable to actually get these stories right, because they're unable to get these stories because you're not able to translate. You're not able to translate the. You're not able to translate better. Okay, let me put that again. Stories are great and stories are fine, but the problem is that you can't actually translate these stories into business, and this is the problem. If you look at the Hollywood blockbusters, for example, you know, that you so much enjoyed, you know, they've got the car chase, the sex scene, humor. How are you going to translate that into your particular presentation? How are you going to translate into your particular area of business, right? It's very, very hard. So that's why I prefer the story selling model, which actually is an amalgamation of the Japanese type of storytelling, which I learned from Nintendo, which we will cover later, right? Let me just jump right in. So before I continue my story, so basically, the story hasn't ended yet. So after Australia, I came back to Malaysia, and I started a business in Singapore and Malaysia, a chocolate business, right? And it was an amazing chocolate called Pierre Ledon, created by the same person who created by Pierre Ledon himself, right? This is the 4th generation master baker, chocolatier who makes chocolate for the King of Belgium, right? And so this chocolate is amazing, and I looked in Malaysia, I looked in Singapore, I looked in Southeast Asia. He's not present, right? It was in he's like top 5 chocolatier in Japan, right? He's available, and so I thought, wow, you know, this is a great opportunity. So I jumped in, and I partnered with him, right? So we started a business together. Long story short, I lost about $250,000, right? And I realize now that it's not just about the business, but it's about the business of running the business. It's not about the communication. It's about the story behind the communication. It's not everything that you see is only one part of it, right? There's other parts which are parts you don't see, the stuff below the iceberg. So I'm on a mission now to actually uncover the stuff that's beneath the waterline, the invisible, right? I'm passionate about entrepreneurship, so I am looking to impact and empower 10,000 entrepreneurs in 10 years. This is my goal, right? So part of this video, part of this series, part of my publications is about that. It's about empowering entrepreneurs, teach them how they can actually tell a better story, teach them how they can actually do better, right?